The persistent hum of her computer accompanied the rhythmic tapping of her fingers on the keyboard as Sarah Jennings, a graphic designer in the bustling city of Denver, navigated the complexities of her latest project. The chaos of the advertising agency buzzed around her, a cacophony of ringing phones and chattering colleagues, all drowned out by the focus required for her work. But today, even the sanctuary of her cubicle, decorated with sketches and photos of her golden retriever, Bailey, couldn't shield her from the pressure of the ticking clock and the critical eyes of her boss, Mr. Henderson. "Sarah, this isn't what the client wanted." Mr. Henderson's voice sliced through her concentration, sharp and disapproving. He hovered over her, his presence like a dark cloud. "You've missed the brief. I need this redone, and I need it yesterday." Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and frustration as she nodded, her usual composed demeanour cracking under the strain. "Of course, I'll adjust it right away," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Home was her solace, a neatly kept apartment just a short walk from the park where Bailey spent his days lounging in sunbeams or eagerly awaiting her return. But as she opened the door that evening, the absence of his bounding greeting was the first thread unravelling the tapestry of her orderly world. Bailey lay there, in his bed by the window, his tail thudding weakly against the floor at the sight of her. "Hey, boy," Sarah murmured, kneeling to stroke his once lustrous fur, now dulled with age. She fetched his dinner, the chicken and rice he always devoured with gusto, but tonight Bailey turned his nose away, his apathy toward food a stark deviation from the norm. That night, as Bailey's steady breathing filled the silence of the room, Sarah lay awake, her thoughts ensnared by anxiety. She rose, as if on autopilot, and scribbled a list of veterinarians on a notepad, each name etched with the weight of her growing fears. The next morning, their usual walk was anything but. Bailey ambled along, his gait slower, his stops more frequent, and his usual curiosity replaced by a weary detachment. Sarah watched with a knot in her throat, each of Bailey's laboured steps a stark reminder of the relentless march of time. "Morning, Sarah." The cheerful voice of Dr. Emily Liu, her neighbour and a local veterinarian, cut through her reverie. "Bailey's looking a bit under the weather today." Sarah forced a smile, her eyes betraying her concern. "Yeah, he's not been himself lately. I'm sure it's nothing." But Dr. Liu's gaze lingered on Bailey, wise and knowing. "Sarah, if you need anything, I'm here. Sometimes these things... well, it's important to be prepared." The words hung in the air, a prophecy Sarah wasn't ready to face. She thanked Dr. Liu and ushered Bailey back home, her mind a whirlwind of denial and the dawning realization that their time together might be drawing to a close. The inciting incident that morning wasn't a dramatic event, no sudden illness or catastrophe, but the culmination of 1,000 little signs she had tried to ignore. It was the gentle nudge from Dr. Liu, the refusal of Bailey's favourite meal, and the slow, inexorable change in his once vibrant spirit. It was the moment Sarah knew that the comfortable, predictable life she had built with Bailey was about to shift beneath her feet, and nothing would ever be the same again. The amber hues of the setting sun bathed the park in a warm glow, a stark contrast to the chill settling in Sarah Jennings's heart, as she watched Bailey, her constant companion of the last 10 years, attempt to chase a squirrel. It was a pursuit that once embodied his youthful exuberance, but now it only highlighted his decline. With a faltering gait, Bailey stumbled and fell to the ground with a soft thud. Sarah's breath hitched as she rushed to his side, her work bag falling forgotten to the path. "It's okay, boy," she whispered, stroking his head as he lay panting, the squirrel long forgotten. With gentle coaxing, she helped him to his feet, but the playful light in his eyes had dimmed. The walk home was silent, each of Bailey's laboured steps a sombre march that echoed the turmoil within Sarah. Back in the safety of their apartment, Sarah set about cleaning up after Bailey, who had become incontinent, a new development that added to the mounting evidence of his deterioration. She tried to lose herself in her freelance design work, but the screen's glow couldn't dispel the shadow cast by Bailey's condition. She longed for the days when he was a sprightly poop, her carefree and reliable sidekick. The next morning, in the sterile environment of Dr. Emily Liu's veterinary clinic, the harsh fluorescent lights seemed to spotlight Sarah's vulnerability. Dr. Liu laid out the truth with a compassionate bluntness that made Sarah's stomach clench. "Bailey's quality of life has to be our priority," Dr. Liu said, her voice steady. "We can manage his symptoms, keep him comfortable, but it's about cherishing the time you have left." Sarah nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "I just thought we had more time," she managed to say, her voice a mere whisper. The call to adventure came in the form of a glossy brochure Dr. Liu handed her, filled with information on senior dog care. It was a roadmap to an uncharted world, one where each decision carried the weight of Bailey's remaining days. That night, the apartment felt smaller, the silence more oppressive. Sarah curled up on the couch, Bailey's head resting in her lap, the brochure unread on the coffee table. The comforting rhythm of his breathing was a balm to her restless mind, but it was also a countdown, each breath marking a moment closer to goodbye. The pull-out rug moment came unexpectedly. Sarah awoke to Bailey's distress, his attempts to rise met with failure. His whimpers cut through the pre-dawn quiet and pierced her heart. With tears blurring her vision, she lifted him, his body heavy in her arms, and laid him on his bed, surrounded by his favourite toys. It was a significant event that shattered any lingering denial. There was no going back to the way things were, no more ignoring the truth. The path forward was one of acceptance, of making the most of the time they had left, and of letting go of the hope for a miracle. It was time to face the journey's end with grace and love, for Bailey's sake and for her own. The glow of the laptop screen cast a soft light on Sarah Jennings' face as she scrolled through an online forum for pet owners with aging pets. Each click was a hesitant step into a world she had resisted acknowledging, a world where every story mirrored her own. With a deep breath, Sarah introduced herself and Bailey, pouring their story into words that felt like a release. The forum welcomed her, a virtual hug from strangers who understood. One message stood out, from a woman named Maria, who had navigated this path before. "Cherish the good days," Maria wrote, "and remember, you're not alone." Sarah clung to those words, a lifeline thrown across the digital expanse. The following weekend, Sarah watched Bailey in the park, his movements slower than the children playing nearby, but every bit as heartwarming. He nosed a new plush toy Sarah had bought, a replacement for the one he'd loved to shreds years ago. Despite the coolness of the autumn air, a warmth spread through Sarah, as Bailey's tail gave a feeble but genuine wag. This small victory, a moment of joy amidst the struggle, seemed monumental. A knock on the door later that day signalled the arrival of Dr. Emily Liu, carrying a batch of homemade dog treats and a comforting smile. "I thought Bailey might enjoy these," she said, placing a gentle hand on Bailey's back as he sniffed appreciatively at the treats. Sarah made tea, and they sat at the kitchen table, the vet's words weaving through Sarah's fears, offering practical advice and emotional support. "Palliative care is about comfort," Dr. Liu explained, "and there's comfort in routine, familiar faces, and favourite spots." The first pinch point came unannounced during their evening walk. Bailey's legs gave out, his body no longer able to support even the gentlest stroll. With a strength she didn't know she had, Sarah lifted him, carrying him home as tears streamed down her cheeks. That night, Bailey's bed was moved to the living room, closer to Sarah's watchful care. The weight of carrying Bailey was not just physical, it was the weight of their shared history, the heaviness of impending loss. It marked a definitive shift in their relationship. Sarah was no longer just the caregiver, she was the guardian of his dignity in these final chapters, The forum became Sarah's refuge, where she found solace in shared experiences and advice. She learned of small ways to adapt her home for Bailey's comfort, non-slip mats, extra cushions, and the importance of maintaining a routine that included plenty of cuddles and soft words. Each adaptation, each new routine, was an acknowledgement of Bailey's decline, but also a celebration of the bond that only deepened with each challenge they faced together. It was the construction of a new world within the familiar walls of their home, a world where every moment was precious, every memory a treasure to be stored for the cold days ahead. Sarah Jennings's hands were steady as she concealed Bailey's medication inside a spoonful of soft cheese, her eyes locked on his, full of encouragement. Bailey licked at the treat with less vigour than before, but the trust in his gaze was unwavering. Sarah had rearranged her living room, removing anything that could hinder Bailey's now uncertain navigation. Rugs that could slip, small steps he could no longer manage. Gone, replaced by a landscape tailored to his comfort. That night, as Bailey rested in his new bed, Sarah sat beside him with a sketchpad, her pencil dancing across the paper, bringing to life the peaceful expression on his sleeping face. With each stroke, she felt as if she were etching her love into permanence, capturing the essence of Bailey that she feared time would soon erase. The drawings were more than art. They were silent conversations, confessions of fear, and whispers of gratitude for the unwavering companionship. The next day, a frank discussion with Dr. Emily Liu offered Sarah a harsh revelation. "We can't stop the aging, Sarah," Dr. Liu said, her voice a mixture of empathy and realism. "But we can make Bailey's journey comfortable. Think about what he enjoys, the smells, the sounds, and fill his days with those." Sarah's evenings transformed into periods of reflection and planning. She mapped out Bailey's bucket list, focusing on sensory experiences that would bring him joy. The list was simple: bask in the morning sun, relish the cool evening breeze, and indulge in the flavours of gourmet treats. The truth and ultimatum moment came when Sarah was presented with a choice by Dr. Liu, an aggressive treatment that promised more time, but at the cost of Bailey's current state of peace. The decision lay heavy on Sarah's heart. She found herself at a crossroads between her selfish desire for more time and the selfless act of ensuring Bailey's comfort. It was a battle between her head and heart, fought in the quiet of her apartment, with Bailey's trusting eyes looking on. With a deep, shaky breath, Sarah chose comfort over time, quality over quantity. She would not subject Bailey to the rigours of treatment that would only serve to extend her time with him, not his enjoyment of life. It was a commitment to make every day a celebration of the life they shared, rather than a desperate grasp at a future that was no longer theirs to claim. In this decision, Sarah found a newfound determination. She would be the guardian of Bailey's happiness, the architect of his final days. It was a role she accepted with a heavy heart, but also with an undercurrent of honour, knowing that this last act of love was perhaps the most important of all. Sarah Jennings sat with a notepad at her kitchen table, the morning light spilling over the paper as she listed simple joys for Bailey's bucket list. The list was modest: a gentle walk in the park, an extra cosy nap spot, a feast of delicious scents and tastes. Each item was a promise, a small pledge of devotion to Bailey's happiness. Later that week, Sarah took Bailey to the edge of a serene lake, the water reflecting the autumn sky. She supported Bailey's frail body as he waded into the shallow water, his tail managing a slow, contented wag. His coat, damp and darkened by the water, gleamed in the sun as he looked up at Sarah, his eyes still carrying the glimmer of youth. Sarah's heart swelled. The lake had been their place, a site of countless summer memories, and now it held the tender note of their last visit. The doggy cake came on a Saturday morning, a concoction of peanut butter and carrot, Bailey's favourites. As he licked the plate clean, Sarah found herself laughing through tears. Each lick was a statement, a moment of life celebrated amidst the shadow of decline. The small victory of his appetite was a shared triumph, a momentary reprieve in their shared journey. The midpoint of their story arrived unannounced on a rare day when Bailey's energy seemed to surge. He greeted Sarah with a bark when she returned from work, a sound she hadn't heard in weeks. Hope flickered in Sarah's chest, a dangerous flame. But Dr. Liu's words from their last visit echoed in her mind, a grounding reminder to treasure these moments rather than expect them to endure. That evening, as Bailey lay curled in his new bed, Sarah joined him, lying on the floor. She spoke softly of the days they'd spent chasing frisbees and hiking trails, her voice a tender bridge to the past. Bailey listened, his eyes closing with a sigh that spoke of contentment and trust. But with dawn came the realization that good days were not a reversal, but respites in an inevitable progression. Bailey's energy waned, and Sarah understood that the burst of vitality was a gift, not a guarantee. The forum members, her newfound confidence, offered words of wisdom. Each good day was a pearl to be strung together, creating a necklace of memories that would adorn her heart forever. Sarah embraced this philosophy, viewing each of Bailey's smiles, each tail wag, as a treasure to be cherished. She became a collector of moments, an archivist of joy in the face of the relentless march of time. Each day became a balancing act between celebrating life and preparing for the inevitable goodbye, a tightrope walk Sarah navigated with grace, and a love as deep as the bond she shared with Bailey. The early morning air was crisp as Sarah Jennings took Bailey to their favourite spots around the city, each place imbued with memories of years gone by. She snapped photos as Bailey, clad in his blue-knitted sweater, sniffed at the familiar scents of the old oak tree in the park, the bench by the duck pond, and the quiet corner of the bookstore they frequented. His slow, yet eager steps were a bittersweet melody to Sarah's day. As they returned from their nostalgic tour, Sarah prepared a special dinner for Bailey, a blend of ground turkey and sweet potatoes, his nostrils flaring at the aroma. But the harsh truth of Bailey's failing strength overshadowed the joy of the meal. That night, Bailey's struggle became apparent. He lay motionless, unable to stand, his eyes clouded with confusion and pain. Sarah sat by him, her comforting hand a silent vow to stay by his side through the darkening hours. The next day, with the help of Dr. Emily Liu, Sarah transformed the living room into a sanctuary for Bailey, complete with his bed positioned to catch the morning sun and the soothing sounds of classical music filling the space. The vet's visit was gentle, her prognosis delivered with a compassionate clarity that made Sarah's heart ache. The final item on Bailey's bucket list was a sunset at the park. Sarah wrapped Bailey in a soft, warm blanket and carried him to their bench. They sat in silence, watching the sky bleed colours of orange and pink as day surrendered to night. Sarah whispered stories to Bailey, recounting their adventures, each word a tribute to their enduring friendship. The second pinch point struck when they returned home. Bailey suffered a seizure, his body tensing and shaking in Sarah's arms. The episode passed, leaving Bailey exhausted and Sarah with a profound realization. Their journey was nearing its end. Her tears fell as she cradled him, her whispered apologies for the cruelties of age lost in the softness of his fur. Dr. Liu arrived swiftly, her medical bag in hand, her face etched with empathy. She assured Sarah that Bailey was not in pain, that the seizure was a sign of his body's wear, not distress. Sarah listened, her resolve hardening amidst the flood of emotions. She would not let Bailey suffer. She would honour their life together with dignity and grace. In the quiet that followed, Sarah sat with Bailey, her fingers tracing the white fur that framed his face. She told him of her love, of her gratitude for the loyalty and lessons he had bestowed upon her. As Bailey rested, Sarah planned a memorial in his favourite spot in the garden, a cherry blossom tree to symbolise the beauty and impermanence of life. It was a promise to Bailey, an oath that his memory would flourish long after his footsteps had faded. The once vibrant energy of the apartment dwindled to a sombre quiet as Sarah Jennings watched over Bailey, who lay with a stillness that was foreign to his nature. The tick of the clock was a stark reminder of the time slipping away, each second precious and heavy with unspoken goodbyes. Sarah's routine was no longer her own, dictated by Bailey's needs, medications, comfort adjustments, and the constant vigil of his breathing. Her laptop lay closed, work emails unanswered, as her world narrowed to the confines of the living room, transformed into a space where Bailey's comfort was paramount. The piles of blankets on the floor, the water bowl within reach, and the gentle nightlight that cast a serene glow, all curated by Sarah to ease Bailey's final journey. The online community that had once been a source of strength now echoed with stories of loss and survival, a mirror to Sarah's impending reality. She drew solace from their messages, each one a handhold as she navigated her grief. Yet the overwhelming sorrow felt isolating, a solitary island in a sea of shared experiences. One afternoon, with Bailey resting against her, Sarah received a message from Maria, the woman whose words had first guided her through this uncharted territory. "Let him feel your love. Let that be your guide," the message read, a virtual pep talk that nudified Sarah's resolve. It was this support that nudged her from the paralyzing grief to embrace the remaining time with a renewed spirit. With a new sense of purpose, Sarah carried Bailey out into the garden, where they sat together under the shade of the old maple tree. She read to him from his favourite stories, their tales of adventure and loyalty, now a soothing balm to them both. Bailey's eyes would flicker with a vestige of his younger self as familiar passages filled the air, a testament to the countless times these stories had been their shared joy. The final battle of acceptance approached as Sarah prepared for the inevitable. She organised Bailey's veterinary records, penned heartfelt thank you notes to Dr. Liu and the online community, and placed an order for a cherry blossom tree, Bailey's future memorial. Each task was a step toward closure, an act of love that honoured the life they had shared. In the quiet moments, Sarah addressed her own needs, allowing tears to flow, granting herself moments of rest and reaching out to friends she had withdrawn from. It was a seizing of the sword, not to fight against the inevitable, but to wield the power of her love for Bailey in these last acts of guardianship. The chapter closed with Sarah sitting by Bailey, her fingers gently combing through his fur. In the soft whispers of the night, she recounted the lessons he had taught her, of presence, of joy in the simple moments, and of the beauty found in the farewell. It was a vigil of love, a silent symphony of memories that wove through the room, enveloping them both in a peace that transcended the pain. The relentless march of time within the walls of Sarah Jennings' home had slowed to a gentle crawl. Bailey, once a vibrant thread in the fabric of Sarah's life, was now fading, his once bright eyes dimming. The ultimate defeat loomed, a spectre that Sarah could no longer ignore. She whispered words of love and life into Bailey's ear, her voice a soft lullaby against the quiet of the impending dawn. Sarah had transformed the living room into a haven, a cocoon of warmth and love, where Bailey's final moments would be as comfortable as possible. She surrounded him with his favourite things, the tattered red ball he had carried in his mouth on countless walks, the worn blanket that smelled of their shared home, and a softly playing recording of the lulling sounds of the forest they had often walked through. The hours passed, measured in gentle strokes of Sarah's hand over Bailey's fur and the silent prayers she offered to whatever gods might be listening. When Bailey's breaths became shallow and sparse, Sarah held him close, her heart shattering in the silent explosion of ultimate defeat. He slipped away as dawn kissed the horizon, his departure leaving a stillness that was both profound and achingly empty. In the days that followed, Sarah planted the cherry blossom tree in the garden, its roots a physical manifestation of Bailey's enduring presence in her life. She hung a small engraved plaque under the burgeoning branches, declaring it Bailey's spot. Each shovel of earth was a testament to her love, each tear that fell watered the promise of remembrance. The bittersweet return to the ordinary world was marked by the absence of the click of Bailey's nails on the hardwood floor, the expectant gaze waiting for treats, the comforting weight of his head on her feet. Yet, in the returning routines of daily life, Sarah found solace. She returned to work, her designs now infused with a depth of emotion that had not been there before. Bailey's memory became a muse of sorts, inspiring creations that spoke of love and loss, of joy and sorrow. The apartment, once filled with the sounds of Bailey's presence, now echoed with his memory. Sarah found herself pausing in the doorway, expecting a greeting that no longer came, only to smile wistfully at the cherry blossom tree visible through the window, its branches a testament to the cycle of life. In the final section break, a rebirth occurred not just in the garden, but within Sarah herself. She reflected on their time together, the growth that had occurred within her, the strength she had found in the midst of sorrow, and the profound change in her outlook on life. Bailey's memory, once a source of pain, now became a wellspring of inspiration, urging her to face each new challenge with the love and resilience he had embodied.